Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. This is Scott Ratterman, and I would like to welcome you to our 8th session in our monthly Lunch and Learn series. Again, Revolution Group will be discussing topics of interest for your best practices for your small to medium business. If there's a topic that you are personally interested in discussing, please feel free to tweet at rev_group using the hashtag Lunch and Learn, and we will take that topic into consideration for future webinars. As many of you may be aware, we are a premier IT consulting firm serving small to medium businesses in the greater Columbus area for over 20 years. Today's discussion is on spear phishing, and as normal, I am joined by our IT architect, Scott Coffman, who will dive deeper into the subject. If there are any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to type them in the browser, and we will address them at the conclusion. Now I will turn the mic over to Scott for our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Ratterman. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. If you remember, a few months ago, we had a lunch and learn on spam and phishing. Due to the rise of some certain attacks that are referred to as spear phishing, I thought it was a good idea to kind of talk about this specific example of targeted malware. The definition of spear phishing: targeted email scam with the sole purpose of obtaining unauthorized access to sensitive data. The key word here is targeted. That's the key difference between spear phishing and just plain old phishing. Plain old phishing, if you think about it, it's with a net. They're casting a wide audience, trying to hope to get a couple people in the net. Whereas spear phishing is a targeted effort. They are going after you specifically. They have identified you as someone they want to go after, whether it be for monetary gain or for access to company information or access to your social media account, whatever it may be. They are targeting you specifically. Some of the trends with spear phishing we're seeing and why that we're seeing a gravitation towards this method are driven for a few reasons. One of the reasons being the rise of the social networking sites. Employees are sharing information about their jobs and colleagues with information that's on Facebook talking about certain parts of their job. LinkedIn is a haven for spear phishers to gather information about you and your company, what your organization structure looks like. They arm hackers with ammunition they need to conduct sophisticated spear phishing attacks. There's also a reduction in profitability from spam efforts. Spam's been around a long time. Spam filters have caught a lot of the tricks, and it's become less profitable. When they send out those messages, they'll send out 100,000 messages hoping to get 10 people, and those 10 people, maybe they get certain compromised accounts from them. It's a lot more profitable for them going for spear phishing attacks. So you're seeing a migration of criminals going away from spam and phishing to spear phishing efforts. Another trend driving this is low-cost computing, specifically cloud computing. Hackers can go get a server, a whitelisted IP address, a domain name, and an SSL certificate for less than $50, and they can stand that up in a matter of a couple of hours and use that to launch their attack from. When they're done with their attack, they fold it up, throw it away. They don't have to go buy a server. They aren't housing this in their own address where it can be tracked. It really is offering them the platform to launch these attacks. And also, there's a bigger market today for the hacked info that they're getting, whether it's for their own gain or whether they're looking to resell that information. There's people out there that are willing to buy it. Therefore, there's a demand. When there's a demand, supply takes over. A ploy for spear phishing is usually centered around an individual or an organization. They're going to use Google, social media, LinkedIn to obtain the information. In some cases, they're actually going to call the organization. Maybe they're going to try and talk to the receptionist to, hey, I was trying to reach so-and-so. What's his email address? Once they've got the email address, they have the structure of how your organization does your email account. So if they know that Susie in accounting is sdoe@company.com, well, they know that the CEO's name is John Doe, so they know his email must be jdoe. So it's something that's not likely to browse suspicions, but now they have the CEO's email address. The spear phishing attack, it's going to be all of the information they're going to put in there is going to be to reduce your suspicions and provide motivation to take an action. the little infographic down there. 95% of all attacks on enterprise networks are the result of successful spear phishing. And what that means is it's you hear about these credit card hacks, you hear about social media accounts being hacked, and you wonder how do they get access to that? Well, most of that originates from a spear phishing attack. They're actively phishing employees to gain access to those things, and that's how vulnerabilities are found 95% of the time. It's not necessarily always a hacker, you know, in the movies breaking into the firewall and installing software. A lot of times they have someone open the door for them unknowingly. Some traits of spear phishing. The sender of the message is usually known to the recipient. Whether it actually comes from their mailbox or not, they're going to make it look like it does. The subject line, they're going to try and induce fear or greed. They're going to try and play on kind of human tendencies. The contents of the message will be personalized, so it'll be to you, and they may actually mention your name in the email, just to further reduce your suspicions and get you to open the attachment or click the link. And also that they're going to be sent to a small set of recipients. Obviously, if you get an email saying, hey, can you go ahead and approve this wire transfer for me, and they're sending it to 300 people, well, that's going to be pretty obvious. But if they're sending it to just you or maybe 2 people that you know the other person, it's going to look more legitimate. All of this information, you know, as we mentioned, is found through common means or through human means. And the term for that, I'm sure you've heard of, is social engineering. And some flags on spear phishing using social engineering can be seen from the from address. You know, it appears to have been sent from someone inside the company, but it's unusual for that person. It's out of character. You know, they don't usually ask for that type of thing, or you don't have that type of relationship with them. The email address, if you look closely, it's from a suspicious domain. Maybe it's company.net instead of company.com, or maybe they have a 0 instead of an O in the word company. You know, the email is unexpected with a link or attachment asking you to do something. It's not something you're expected to do or usually do. The time the email's sent. You know, does your CEO usually send emails at 3 in the morning on a Saturday? If not, it's probably not. You know, it's going to another red flag for you to kind of say, hey, this doesn't sit well with me. You know, are they asking you to do something to avoid a negative consequence or to gain something of value? Again, playing off human emotions. You know, are there spelling errors? Is the tone or content unusual for the sender? Does the sender usually normally abbreviate certain words and now they're spelling them out? You know, all these things together can give you a gut feel of, you know, something's off about this. I should ask someone about it, or maybe I should go talk to that person and ask them what really they need just to make sure this is legit. I think both parties involved would appreciate that kind of level of suspicion and verification. So kind of going through kind of what social engineering flags and the ploys that they use, let's take a look at it from the anatomy of the entire attack, starting with the attacker. So the hacker is going to pick a target, and he may just, you know, go out browsing around on LinkedIn or Manta and find a good target. They're going to find out what size the company is, so they know what kind of organization they're dealing with, your industry. They're going to attempt to find out the employees that have access to company data systems. You know, who's the CFO, who's the accountant, who's the CEO, who's the system administrator. They're going to go ahead and do research on those individuals, gather as much information as they can, so they can target, using that information, they can target their message and craft it and have it be a successful ploy. They're going to create a fake but recognizable email address to impersonate someone in the organization. Again, it could be just a simple spoof of the from address, or they could compromise your mail server and actually send it from the account. That's the most highly effective way. Or they register a domain that looks similar and set up a quick, you know, email address with that domain and send from there with the same, you know, jdoe at part of it. They send the message. You know, the spam filter, it's going to trust the message because it's coming from a legitimate IP address because they've signed up to a legitimate service, either GoDaddy or Vistaprint, one of these small business, you know, where it's easy to get your digital footprint off the ground very quickly. They're going to trust and say, yeah, I trust GoDaddy, I trust Vistaprint, and so the spam filter is going to allow it through. The recipient's going to get the email, and they're going to say, hey, I know this guy. Yes, he's wanting me to do something. Sure, I'll do that for you because he's saying he's out of town. He needs me to check something for him. Yeah, that all lines up. Let me go ahead and open that attachment. You open that attachment, and boom, you just got malware installed in your computer. Now the hacker has a back door, and they can steal information from your network, or maybe they prompted you to do a wire transfer or something other of the sort. So this kind of shows you the entire trail that they will take to pull off a spear phishing attack. Obviously, this is just a very simple example, but really anybody with the motivation, the criminal motivation to do this, can sit down in an afternoon and pull off an attack like this. And being that it's targeted, they just need a couple people to fall victim to this, and they're gonna have good financial motivation to do so. Leading into some actual examples or crafted examples. This example, they're asking for a wire transfer to be done. If you take a look at the email addresses, notice the jdoe@companydomain.us, sending it to this J Smith. The actual domain is companydomain.com. They have gone and registered this .us domain that was available and sent the email. When you're looking at email, how closely do you really look at the email address? It has the name. It looks pretty legit. Are you going to notice those little two digits there? Now, obviously, there's some other things involved here. A wire transfer, that's organization specific. Do you usually process wire transfers? Do they usually come through email? But they create a sense of urgency. Let me know when it is completed. So this is the CEO of the company instructing you to do something, and they want to know when it's done. So they're prompting you to do something and giving you a sense of urgency to do it. Another example. Here they sent an email with an attachment that says new salaries. So here's a fixed version of the salary. So in this case, they're sending something to you that's coming from what appears to be your human resources department. And whether or not you're the person in the organization that has access to salary information, maybe that says, yes, I need to open that up to look at the new salaries, but maybe you're not supposed to have access to that. And of course, now it was sent to you, and is your curiosity going to take over and want to open up that attachment? PDFs, they all seem legitimate, but PDFs have, Acrobat can have compromises as well. You can open that up, and then you have a malware, a Trojan installed in your computer. Again, is this something you usually receive just because you have this information here? Are you expecting that information? It's an obvious ploy to get you to open the attachment. Here's another example. In this example, they're actually, if you look at the domain names, the from is correct, the to is correct, the signature is, in this example, let's just assume the signature is the same as it always is. In this example, they've actually taken advantage of a compromised email server to send the email as if it was from the executive. And if you read this, it says, I've been away, I'm on a business trip, they have their doubts about this, I need some information. Can you please send me the last sales report and business plan for the next year to my public email address? So he's asking for you to send basically your company proprietary confidential information to a Gmail address. In this example, this could be a ploy from a competitor or someone seeking to gain this information to sell to a competitor, and they're asking you to send it to this Gmail address. And it all looks legit, but why wouldn't you just send it back to the original address? Well, Harry J might see that email come in and be like, what the heck, I didn't ask for this, and now they're tipped off to it. So a good thing, never, is it out of character for them to use a personal email address? Obviously, Gmail, you can't control Gmail accounts, so as a company policy, maybe you don't allow that. Here's a real-world example from a client that just came in this week. They sent it on for me to take a look at. If you look through it, I need you to make an urgent, again, sense of urgency, domestic wire transfer of $27,650. Please let me know if you're in so I can send the beneficiary details. So this is actually not telling them to do it. They're saying, hey, are you in? I need you to do this for me. So you're more likely to say, yes, I'm in. So now you're kind of already hooked into that. But if you look at it, the first thing that tips me off is the use of the USD for US dollars. As if your company is located in the United States and you're talking to your executive, when you're using dollar figures, do you always say USD? No, it's assumed you're using dollars. So in this specific example, it actually came from Nigeria, and foreigner crafted this email, and a foreigner that uses a different type of currency uses USD, so that's a good tip there. But the signature was also crafted with real company information to, again, look legitimate. I had to blur out, obviously, the personal information, but if you clicked on reply to this message, the two addresses actually taylorcruise6060@outlook.com. They're just spoofing the from address. So really all they're doing is faking, but when you try to reply, it goes to a different email address. So that's a key indicator. So now that we've shown you some examples, some ways that you can protect yourselves to not fall victim to spear phishing attacks. If you use Office 365 for your mail, or you have an on-premise Exchange server, there's a neat feature there called mail tips. You may have seen this if you try to hit reply all to the all company email distribution group. It says, you know, hey, heads up, you're sending this mail to 120 people. You know, if you've seen that before, that's a mail tip. And one thing you can do to help with spear phishing is to turn on the mail tip when you're sending an email to someone outside your organization. So if you receive an email from the CEO and you hit reply and you get a mail tip that says this recipient's outside the organization, well, that's a pretty good indicator that it's not really the CEO, and that it's actually somebody that registered a fake domain name, or they spoofed the from address. Obvious way to protect yourself is education and awareness training. You know, this type of education is great, but studies have shown for it to really be effective, you need to have interactive training. And whether that's a session that people going into it know is interactive training, or maybe you hire a company to do test spear phishing. They actually craft spear phishing directly to your company, to someone in your organization, to test your vulnerability. And then they can use that as education for everybody. So there's services you can sign up for to perform spear phishing testing, and companies out there will do fake spear phishing attempts and give you the result of that and tell you whether or not people fell victim to it, and you can use that as a good education session. Another tip is to register like domain names. You know, if your company domain.com, register .net, .org, .us, etc. And also pay attention to maybe different spellings of your company. You know, domain names are relatively cheap in the grand scheme of things, and it really kind of protects yourself, limiting kind of a surface attack, or attack the surface from one of those other domain names. Obviously, one for wire transfers to implement protocols. You know, don't rely on an email to send a wire transfer. Have verbal confirmation from the executive. Make that a protocol and have that be trained through your users. Penetration testing, this is just a general best practice for cybersecurity. You know, have your IP address tested for vulnerabilities. You know, is there anything you can close up that would limit the surface attack area for hackers to use? You know, reward good behavior. If someone in your organization brings to light a spear phishing attempt, you know, reward that employee. So you want employees to bring that forward. You know, a lot of times spear phishing happens and people think they did something wrong, and they're likely to hide it or ignore it. You know, give away gift cards for bringing forward the spear phishing attempt, and then send that out to the organization to educate users. The more people are aware of it and brought to light, the more likely they are to be aware of things in the future, and they won't be caught from those types of attacks. And obviously, it's a general best practice. Don't post private info to social media sites. And we've all heard this 100 times, but you know, it's the same reason you don't post when you're going on vacation to Facebook, so robbers can see that your house is empty. It's the same thing with corporate information. Don't post that you're going on business trips. Don't post internal protocols and procedures. Just common sense to try to limit the information that's out there that hackers can use. That concludes the presentation. If you have any questions about this, feel free to give me a call. The number's on the screen there, to reach out to your account manager. If you want some more personalized training, if you want me to come in and talk to your organization about this, we can definitely accommodate that. If you want some information on the third-party services for penetration testing or spear phishing testing, you want help implementing mail tips, anything like that you've seen in this slide, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to help. At this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Ratterman.
All right, thanks, Scott. Looks like we had two questions come in. The first question was, will I be able to alter my spam filter to catch a phishing attempt?
Sometimes. In the case where they're spoofing the from address, so they're just making it look like it came from jdoe@company.com, but it's really another address, you can set up a rule in your spam filter that blocks any mail from the internet coming into your organization with your domain name. Because if you think about it, all mail that you receive from your domain name should be just internal to your organization. It's not going out the internet and back. So that's one way you can limit that. But really, a lot of times it's tough because they register real domain names and it's sending from a legitimate server. So you can't rely completely on a technical solution to blocking spear phishing. You really have to combine it with education and training and procedures and protocols around certain aspects to protect yourself. There's not a smoking gun or a magic bullet that'll block all of these attempts. And just like spam or antivirus, as soon as you protect from one, they're going to try another way. So again, I emphasize more on the education. There's certainly things you can do from the technical side, but in this instance, with spear phishing, education and common sense is the #1 way to fight it.
All right. Is there any sort of spyware or antivirus software that would prevent phishing attempts?
You can't prevent the attempt if there is an attachment you open that's a virus. If it's a known virus, your spam filter may, or your antivirus or your spam filter may block it. But a lot of times, if this is a targeted attempt, the malware itself may be targeted. You know, that's a specifically crafted piece of malware just for your organization. In that case, it's a new piece of malware, and the AV companies aren't going to know about it, and therefore they're not going to have a definition to block it. You know, there are other services that you can use to help. You know, if there's a known launching pad or a known place that's collecting information that's bad, there's a service from OpenDNS called Umbrella that will basically filter out communication to known bad sites. So it's another layer of defense. And really, you know, in talking with technical solutions to spear phishing, you know, I don't want to say there's nothing you can do, but you can certainly layer your defenses. The more layered defenses you have, the more that they need to go through and the better protected you'll be.
All right. Looks like that's all we had for questions at this point. Again, if there's any additional questions that should come up or any topics of interest that you would be interested in having us cover in the next monthly webinar or webinars, feel free to tweet at us at rev_group using the hashtag #LunchandLearn. And again, if there's any questions, feel free to reach out to Scott as well. Thank you all for attending today. We hope to see you next month. Thank you.